So memorandum of association of the company defines uh, your domain, your area beyond which you cannot go. If you are going beyond your MOA of the company, then you are personally liable to pay off the debts of the company. So because company is an artificial person, company depend upon its directors of the company, and directors they are responsible for the preparation of the MOA of the company, A of the company. And if you are going for a transaction that is not under the purview of the MOA of the company, in that case, the company is not liable to for the payment of that transaction because it is outside the purview of uh, memorandum of association of the company, and that transaction is declared ultra wise the MOA of the company, ultra wise the object clause of the company. That is not part of your object clause of the company, and if you are entering that, you are entering on your own. You have to pay for the consequences. You have to pay for the compensation, whatever is um, incurred by you or incurred by the company, incurred by third party. If any suit filed on the company, the person concerned who are engaged in that, the officers concerned who are engaged in that particular transaction, they are responsible for the payment of the compensation if any uh, involved in that particular case. That is come under the category of ultra wise act. That is outside the purview of the MA of the company. That act does not bind the company for the payment. The person concerned, the officers of the company, those who are responsible for the preparation of the MOA of the company, A of the company, they are responsible for the payment of the dues and payment of the compensation, whatever involved in that particular case, that is outside the uh, purview, outside the domain of MOA of the company, and the person concerned, they are responsible for the payment of dues and not the company. The company is only responsible for the object clause, only responsible for the items which are mentioned in the object clause of the company, for which company is responsible. Although the liability is ultimately paid by members of the company, directors of the shareholders of the company, but the liability first imposed on the company, then paid by its members. So this is about the MOA of the company. MOA is a charter of the company, and it is a very binding document that defines a relationship with the company and its members, company and its shareholders, company and its directors. That defines your relationship, that defines your liability, to what extent you are liable. Uh, if you are going for a contract, if company enter into contract, that is not mentioned, that is not a part of the MOA of the company. In that case, because company is an artificial person, but company runs by its directors, so directors they are responsible for the payment of the uh, payment of the amount if any due on the company in respect of the Ultra Wise Act. Uh, that is a meaning is that beyond powers, uh, that is not part of your rights or powers. As mentioned in the MO of the company, you are only responsible for the objectives which you are mentioned in the IMO of the company, not beyond that. That is beyond your power, that is beyond your control, beyond your rights. In legal terms, it is applicable only to the acts performed in excess of the legal powers of the doer. So it is applicable only to the acts performed in excess of the uh, legal powers of the doer. That is applicable. So you're only responsible for the act for which you are assigned by the company, and for which you are appointed by the company, and your how much you can borrow for the company, how much amount you can borrow in the form of loans and advances, that is defined in your agreement, that is defined in your contract with the company. Your powers is already defined in your service agreements and all. Your rights is already defined in your service agreement and all. And if you are going beyond your powers as a director of the company, borrowing of loans and advances beyond the limit prescribed, and if you are borrowing more than that amount, in that case, the person concerned, the officers of the company, those are responsible for that particular transactions, that particular business events, they are personally liable for the payments of the debts of the company, because it is beyond powers. That is not power. That is not uh, within the acts, within the permissible acts as per the MOA of the company. If it is not permissible by its MOA of the company, in that case, that act declared as ultra vires act, and the company cannot sue on ultra vires transaction. It cannot be sued too if a company supplies goods or offers services or lends money on an ultra vires contract, then it cannot obtain a payment or recover the loan. So company cannot sue on an ultra wise transaction because it is outside the preview of MO of the company. So company has no right to sue to third party because company, as per the MOA of the company, it is outside the purview of MOA. So company cannot enter into that particular contract. If it is company enter, a company cannot file a suit if third party does not pay your dues on time because your enters into ultra vires transaction. In that case, the company cannot file a suit against third party due to non-payment of dues by third party. So further, it cannot be sued too. If a company supplies goods or offers services or lend money on an ultra vires contract, then it cannot obtain payment or recover the loan. So, because the company enters into transaction, business transaction that is not within the powers of the company, that is beyond the powers of the company, that is not within the domain of MOA of the company. If company enters into that particular contract of supplying of goods or services or lend money to an third party, that contract is come under the category of ultra vires contract, and for which company is not in that case the third party cannot able to obtain the payment and recover the loan from the company because of the ultra vires transaction which company enter into. And you should, as a supplier, as a lender, as a you should have information. You should have information about the company, about the which acts company legally permitted to do by the MOA of the company, and the acts for which company is not legally permissible as per the MOA of the company to intend to do. Then in that case, for that transaction, company is not responsible to pay, and also the third party, the supplier of goods and services, they are also not responsible to pay. So it cannot company cannot obtain payment because of the ultra vires transactions in which company intends to, and not able to recover the loan as well. So this is that defines your MOD company defines your limitations, defines your restrictions, defines your power within which company can perform, company can do, company can enter into contract, company can sign a contract, company can file a suit against third party can file a suit against the company because of the permissible acts, because of the allowable acts by the company that is mentioned in the MOA of the company. If you are overlooking your MOA of the company, disregard to the MOA of the company, and not following the rules and regulations of the MOA of the company, provisions of the MOA of the company, in that case, the person concerned and officers of the company, they are liable for the payment of the dues because maybe sometimes you because of the this type of transaction is there, that is ultra vires transaction, so companies cannot sue third party cannot sue on the company, that is the case maybe company cannot sue third party for recovery of the amount because that transaction is ultra vires transaction, and third party also cannot able to recover the amount because the uh, the, the the person with whom, the company with whom you enter into contract, that contract is declared as ultra vires contract with the company, ultra vires transaction with the company, for which company is not bound to pay, and the another person is also not bound to pay. Then come to the concept of ultra vires. Uh, this is concept of ultra vires. Come to the doctrine, that is a principle of ultra vires, doctrine of ultra vires, rules, you can say, golden rules of, you can say, uh, doctrine means principle of ultra vires. And that doctrine defines your limits to the company, that is objective clause specified in the memorandum of the company. that restrained you from using its funds for purposes other than those specified in the memorandum. So restraint means that restrain you, that restrict you from using its funds for purposes other than those specified in the memorandum. So memorandum defines your limits, defines your acts, defines your area, your domain, within which you can function, within which you can enter into transactions with third party, and that defines your restrictions also, restrain you from using its funds for purposes other than those specified in the memorandum, and restrained from carrying on trade different from the one for which the company is authorized to do. So that the MOA of the company that defines in the object clause of the MOA of the company, and that object clause restrain you, that defines the restrictions for carrying on trade different from the one for which you are authorized to do, you are authenticated to do, you are confirmed to do by the company, and that is your trade, your business that is mentioned in your MOA of the company. And if you are going beyond your MOA, you're not following your MOA, you're overlooking your MOA of the company, in that case, you are not authorized to do that act, particular act. If you are entering into that act, then you have to pay bear the consequences of ultra-wise transactions, because company restrained you. The MOA of the company, being an artificial person, a company, and these two are very important documents of the company, MOA of the company, A of the company, and that restrains you from carrying on trade, different trade that is not mentioned, that is not specified in your MOA of the company, and for which you are not authorized to do, not authenticated to do. In that case, uh, if you are entering to that transaction, that type of transaction that is declared as ultra-wise transaction as per the doctrine of ultra-wise, in that case you have to bear the consequences, and maybe you're not liable for that transactions, other person also not liable for that transaction, because that is as per the discretion of the court. Court can cancel the uh, contract, uh, that cancel the contract with the supplier or vendor, or so, and it is as per the discretion of the court of law, because you are um, you're not following the provisions on your or the clauses of MOA of the company. So MOA restrained your powers, restrained your, defined your limits within which you can function, within which you can grow. And if you're trying to disregard to the very important document of the company, that is the constitution of the company, MOA of the company, in that case, the transactions which you are entering into, that transaction for that transaction you are not liable to pay as per the Companies Act 2013, but you have to bear the consequences of ultra-wise act. And if a company doesn't act or enters into a contract beyond the powers of directors of the company itself, then the said contract is void and not legally binding on the company. That this is already explained you in respect of the ultra-wise transaction, for which company is not bound to pay, and third party also with whom you are entering into contract, that person is also not bound to pay to the company. So contract can be cancelled at the discretion of the court judge at the court of law. So if a company enters into an act that is ultra-wise, beyond the powers of the company, beyond the powers of the directors of the company, members of the company, then the said act contract is declared void by the court of law and not legally binding on the company, because company is not authorized to do that act. Legally, you're not authorized to do. If someone uh, claiming on you that you are authorized to do that particular act which is not mentioned in the MOA of the company, then in that case you can take a remedy against this particular act, because company is not permissible, company is not allowed to enter into that particular act of ultra vires. So if the company doesn't enters into a contract beyond the powers of the directors of the company or the company itself, because company is a separate legal entity, concerned company is different from its members. Uh, Company has a separate legal identity, separate legal entity also. So company itself cannot enter into contract, or if companies enter into contract, such type of contracts that is outside the boundaries of the company, outside the boundaries of the MOA of the company. In that case, the said contract is declared void by the court of law and not legally binding on the company. Then come to the doctrine of ultra vires, and it is a fundamental rule of company law. It states that the objects of the company, as specified in the MOA of the company, can be departed from only to the extent permitted by the Act. So that is the doctrine of ultra vires as per the Companies Act 2013. So you can go beyond your MOA if it is if it is permissible by the Companies Act 2013. Otherwise, you have to follow the your MOA of the company, object clause of the company, and you can only go to the extent beyond your MOA if it is permissible, if it is allowed by the Companies Act 2013. Otherwise, you're not allowed to move beyond your MOA of the company. You cannot disregard, you cannot overlook your MOA of the company. Every time you have to see your MOA of the company that defines your limitations, that defines your boundaries, that defines your restrictions in your business activities, restrain you from doing such activities. Which is not specified, in MOA of the company. So, but Act allows you. There are certain permissible limits mentioned in the Companies Act. If Acts allowed you, then you can go beyond your MOA of the company. Otherwise, not. Meaning is that every time you have to follow your guidelines given in the memorandum of association of the company, and you cannot go beyond your guidelines. And if a company borrows money in an ultra-wise transaction to repay a legal loan, then the lender is entitled to recover his loan from the company. So if a company borrows money in an ultra-wise transactions to repay a legal loan, then the lender is entitled to recover his loan from the company. Okay. If it is permitted by the Act, so if the company borrows money in an ultra-wise transactions to repay a legal loan, then lender is entitled to recover his loan from the company. An act which is ultra-wise can be regularized by the shareholders of the company. Means the act which is declared as ultra-wise act in the MOA of the company can be made ratified by the shareholders of the company. So it can be made conform. It can be made within the boundaries of the MOA of the company, A of the company. Then that act is declared as authorized to do that act. Company is authorized legally to do that. That is legal act. Otherwise, it is illegal because you are not authorized to do, and you are doing that. That is not part of your objectives of the company, and you are entering into that particular transaction which is not allowable, which is not permissible as per the MOA of the company. And but shareholders of the company can make that act conform, that can make that act valid by making a rectification in the MOA of the company, that is memorandum of association of the company. So in that case, the shareholders have right to make a ultra-wise transaction valid transactions by making uh, changes in the rectification in the MOA of the company. So shareholders can ratify it, can make it correct, can make it conform. Ratification means can make it conform, to make it valid. Otherwise, you're not authorized to do that particular act. You're not liable to pay in that particular act because you're not permitted by your MOA of the company, and there is no permission allowed to you by the MOA of the company. In that case, you have to bear the consequences of ultra-wise uh, transactions. Point number one in this, if an act is ultra-wise, the powers of director and the shareholders can rectify it. If an act is ultra-wise, the power of directors, then the shareholders can rectify it. And if an act is ultra-wise, the articles of the company, then the company can rectify, can alter the articles of the company. So if the act is otherwise the powers of directors of the company, then the shareholders have a right to rectify and to make it correct the MO of the company, the object clause of the company, and insertion of this particular item, this particular transaction, this particular business item, objective into the IMO of the company, then that act become valid act, valid transaction, permissible transaction, confirmed transaction. To make it a confirm, uh, then shareholders can have a right to make a rectification in the object clause of the company. Uh, this is for the ultra wise transaction to make it a valid transaction. And if an act is ultra wise the articles of the company, then the company can make an alteration in the articles of association of the company. So by this we can make our ultra wise transaction valid transaction. Otherwise you have to bear the consequences of enter into ultra wise act, ultra wise transactions. Then come to the again continuation of doctrine of ultra vires, section 4, subsection 1, clause C of the Companies Act 2013 states that all the objects for which incorporation of the company is proposed, any other matter which is considered necessary in this furtherance should be stated in the memorandum of the company. This is as per the Companies Act 2013, Section 4, subsection 1, clause C. And this states that all the objectives of the company, which is defined in the object clause of the memorandum of association of the company at the time of incorporation of the company, um, it is necessary. It is necessary to for the incorporation of the objectives in the object clause of memorandum of association of the company to make that particular contract binded upon. Otherwise, if you are entering into contract, entering into a transaction with third party for which you are not allowed to do, for which you are not permissible to do by your MO of the company. Uh, so this states your objectives for which the company is incorporated and which is necessary for the incorporation of the company to be defined in the MO of the company. So whereas section 245 subsection 1 clause B of the act provides to the members and depositors a right to file an application before the tribunal if they have reasons to believe that the conduct of the affairs of the company is conducted in a manner which is prejudicial to the interests of the company or its members or depositors, to restrain the company from committing anything which can be considered as a breach of the provisions of the company's memorandum or articles. So, meaning of this section is that, as per section 245, subsection 1, clause B of the Act, which provides to the members and depositors a right to file an application before the tribunal if they have reasons to believe that the conduct of the affairs of the company is conducted in a manner which is prejudicial to the interests of the company and its members and depositors, and to restrain the company from committing anything which can be considered as breach of the provisions of the company's memorandum and articles. This is mentioned in the this particular section 245 and respect of the limitations of the company, restrictions of the company, to restrain company from doing into contact which is not in the interest of the company, which is not in the interest of the thousands of its shareholders of the company, which is not in the interest of the depositors of the company. Uh, so by the members, the application can be given by the members of the company, can be given by the directors or depositors of the company before the tribunal, that is a company law tribunal, national company law tribunal. The reasons believe that the conduct of the company should be conducted in a manner that is within for the interest of the company, for the interest of its members or depositors. Then doctrine of ultra vires, an act legal in itself but not authorized by the object clause of the MOA of the company is ultra vires the company and it is null and void. That is the point number 1 in respect of doctrine of ultra vires. An act legal in itself but not authorized. Suppose you are entering into legal act, that is legal. A legal act by the company's law, legal act by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India, legal act as per the items to be listed under the to be due by the entrepreneurs, by the business persons. So that is act is legal. Act is legal in itself. The transactions you enter, act means the transaction which you enter, that is legal in itself, but that is not authorized. That is not authorized by the object clause of the company, and is ultra vires the company, and it is declared null and void. And so, so for that transaction, maybe that transaction is legal to do by the Companies Act, uh, by the other acts as applicable on the company to do that particular transaction, to do that particular business, particular act. Act means doing business, but not authorized by the object clause of the memorandum section of the company, which is ultra vires the company, and it is declared null and void in the court of law because it is not authorized. Company not authorized you to do that particular act. Although as per the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India, you are authorized to do that particular act, that particular business by the company's law, but not by your objective clause of the memorandum of association of the company, MOA of the company, and that is declared as the Ultra Vires Act, and it is declared null and void in the court of law. This is point number 1. Then point number 2, an act ultra vires the company cannot be ratified even by the unanimous consent of all the shareholders of the company. So an act ultra vires the company cannot be ratified even by the unanimous consent of the shareholders of the company, cannot be ratified. Point number 3 in this, if an act is ultra vires the directors of the company but inter vires the company in itself, then the members of the company have a power to pass a resolution for the purposes of ratification of this act in the general meetings of the members of the company to make that valid act by the by making a rectification in the uh, by making a rectification in the memorandum of association of the company, MOA of the company. So this is point number 3 of doctrine of ultra vires. So act means act. I already explained you. Act means transaction. Act means business transaction. Act means your venture in which you are entering into, which are allowed to enter by the company, by the Companies Act, permission by your members of the company, shareholders of the company, directors of the company. So that act, if it is allowed to enter into by the company, by the members of the company, permissible to you, in that case, that transaction is a valid transaction. Otherwise, it is declared as invalid transaction. So if an act is ultra vires the articles of association of a company, then the same can be ratified by a special resolution at a general meeting. Then come to the objectives of doctrine of ultra vires. and it is a protection of interest of shareholders, large number of shareholders of the company, creditors of the company, that for protection of the interest, uh, it is a duty, it is a responsibility of the company not to enter into contract that is ultra wise the company, ultra wise the above of the company, ultra wise the A of the company, without alteration, without ratification. If company enter into that contract, that agreement with third party, in that case, that agreement is declared ultra wise, and that does not bounce to you, now bounce to the company as well, because company is not permissible, not allowable to enter into transaction which is ultra vires uh, ultra vires company, ultra vires MO of the company. So, for the benefits and for the protection of the interests of the large number of shareholders and creditors of the company, Dr. Altawai's clause has been added into the Companies Act 2013. That defines your boundaries, that defines your limitations beyond which you cannot go, cannot enter without the permission, without ratification, without alteration, without notification that is required to make a ultra-wise act a valid act. Otherwise, it is declared invalid act. So this doctrine prevents the company uh, from changing its activities in a direction agreed by all members, by all members. So whatever you decided in the genomics of the company for the transaction which you are entering into, and it must be with the consent of all the members of the company. Uh, Otherwise, it declares as ultra vires transaction, because dissent is there, and so many number of members giving their dissent to that particular business or transactions and activities. In that case, that transaction is declared as ultra vires transaction as per the doctrine, as per the principle, as per the rule of law of ultra vires. Uh, so for any change in activity, you have to make an alteration, you have to make a modification, you have to change your object clause of MO of the company to make that transaction valid transaction. So you have to pass a resolution, that is special resolution, in the board meetings of the company to make it to effect to the ultra vires transactions, to make it a confirmed, valid, legal transaction as per the Companies Act 2013, as per the MOU of the company, as per the object clause of the memorandum of session of the company. So, but this Dr. Altawise, this defeats the core purpose of the doctrine, not to enter into contract. If you wish to enter into certain concept, suppose you enter into contract which is not legally acceptable by the company law, but authorized by the company. So in that case, this doctrine defeats the very important, significant purpose, goal of the insertion this clause of ultra vires in the Companies Act, that is doctrine of ultra vires. Because you can make an alteration, you can make a rectification for the Ultra Vires Act. So, what is the main, what is the purpose, significance of incorporating this clause, incorporating this section in the Companies Act 2013 in respect of the Dr. Ultra Vires? Uh, so, uh, so protection of for the purpose of protection of the large number of shareholders of the companies, creditors of the company, members of the company. This clause has been inserted. This section has been inserted in the Companies Act. In the Companies Act for the implementation of the doctrine of ultra vires. Then come to the next point: ultra vires borrowings. So borrowing is a borrowing of loans, advances from banks, from financial institutions, from other financial bodies. But ultra vires mean which is for which you are not allowed to borrow, which is you are not permitted to borrow from the company, by the company, by your MO of the company, by AO of the company. You are not allowed. You are not permissible to borrow such extent amount, increased amount beyond which is mentioned in the MO of the company or the company. That is that borrowing is called as ultra wires borrowings. So the power to borrow money is specified by the MOA and articleization of the company. Directors cannot go beyond your MOA of the company, beyond AO of the company. And if you're going beyond the powers, beyond the power to borrow, the loans and advances from banks, from financial institutions, from other financial bodies, MOA of the company, A of the company, you're overlooking your MOA, you're overlooking your A of the company. That transaction, that act is declared, that borrowing is declared as considered as ultra wires borrowings. So that defines your power, that defines your limitations of the amount to be borrowed by the company. Because company is an artificial person, so by directors of the company, they are the representative of the company towards third party. So directors also cannot go beyond the authorities, and if directors wish to borrow beyond their powers, beyond their authorities, then in that case they have to that which is not prescribed in the MA of the company, A of the company, then borrowing is considered as ultra wires borrowing. So power to borrow is specified in the MOA and AO of the company, and directors cannot go beyond your AO of the company. Uh, that this is about the ultra wires borrowings. Then borrowing by a company may be a borrowing which is ultra wires the company, and second is a borrowing which is inter wires the company but ultra wires the directors. So borrowing may be by a company, a borrowing which is ultra vires the company, and borrowing which is inter vires the company, but ultra vires the directors of the company. Okay, so for that is a borrowing which is called as ultra vires borrowing, ultra vires the company, and a borrowing which is inter vires the company. You can allow to company authorize you to, but ultra vires the directors of the company. Ultra directors of the company. Directors are not allowed, not permissible to borrow such amount for the company from banks, financial institutions, or other financial bodies. So any borrowings which is made by an act which is ultra vires will be void ab initio, and it will not bind the company and outsiders. Company cannot get them enforced in a court of law, which is considered as ultra wise borrowing. So company will not bind the company, and company cannot enforce the such contracts, such agreements in the court of law because of ultra wise borrowing, ultra wise transactions. So any borrowing which is made by an act and which is ultra wise will be void ab initio, and it will not bind the company, and company outsiders cannot enforce them in a court of law. And the members of the company have power and rights to prevent the company from making the transaction which is ultra wise the company by bringing injunctions against the company. Then, as per the provisions of the section 180 of the Companies Act, provides the rules regarding the restrictions on powers to borrow by the board of directors. The board of directors of a company shall exercise the following powers only with the consent of the company by passing a special resolution in the meetings of the company. This is as per the provisions of the Companies Act, Section 180 of the Companies Act, and these provisions provide the rules and regulations in regard to the restrictions on the power to borrow by the board of directors of the company, and BOD of the company shall exercise the following powers only with the consent of the company by passing a special resolution to that effect in the company meetings. So board can exercise this power, but with the consent of the company. Company means the members who are present in the company, present at the meeting. By passing a resolution, company can borrow, uh, writers can borrow. Uh, so there are certain restrictions also, but can borrow with the consent of the company. Point number one in this: to sell lease, or otherwise dispose of the whole or substantially the whole of the undertaking of the company, or where the company owns more than one undertaking of the whole or substantially the whole of any of such undertakings. So for this transaction, for this business activity, you have to obtain approval of the members of the company who are present in the meeting, and their special resolution is required for the purposes of passing on this resolution in the board meeting, in the general meeting of the shareholders of the company, members of the company. That defines your power to borrow, to sell, to lease, or otherwise dispose of the whole of the undertaking, substantially whole of the undertaking of the company, and to own more than one undertakings, or have ownership of more than one undertakings of any of such undertakings. In that case, you must have a consent of the company by a special resolution. Point number 2 in this, to invest otherwise in trust securities, the amount of compensation received by it as a result of any merger or acquisition. For that particular transaction, for that particular event or act, you have to obtain a consent of the members of the company or company to enter into that transactions. To invest otherwise in trust securities, the amount of compensation received by it as a result of any merger or amalgamation. So this is a point of to be noted down. So for this particular transaction, for this particular event, the company has to obtain a consent, and the consent has to obtain from the company for entering into such type of transactions. Then point number third, to borrow money where the money is to be borrowed together with the money already borrowed by the company will exceed and get of its paid up share capital and free reserves apart from temporary loans obtained from the company bankers in the ordinary course of business. So to borrow money and where the money to be borrowed together with the money already borrowed by the company will exceed the income of its fiduciary capital free reserves apart from temporary loans obtained from the company bankers in ordinary course of business. For that particular transaction, for that particular event, approval, consent of the company is very important to enter into contract, to enter into agreement with such type of transactions in the normal course of business, in the ordinary course of business. Then to remit or to give time for the repayment of any debt due from a director for that particular transactions, consent is very important. Otherwise, it is considered it as a ultra wise borrowing to remit and to give time for the repayment of any debts due from a director. Point number 5 in this, every special resolution passed by the company general meeting in relation to the exercise of shall specify the total amount up to which the money is being borrowed by the board directors, the title of the buyer or other person buys or takes on lease any property, investment or undertakings as is referred to in that clause in good faith, or the sale or lease of any property of the company, where the ordinary business of the company consisting of comprises of such selling or leasing. So every special resolution passed by the company in general meetings of the company in relation to the exercise of the power amounting to rupees, which is specified in the MO of the company, the amount up to which extent the BOD of the company can borrow from banks or financial institutions. For this purpose, a special resolution has to be passed by the company in general meetings of the company to exercise the power of by the board of directors of the company for the purposes of obtaining loans from banks or financial institutions. Then point number 6 in this, the title of a buyer or other person who buys or takes on lease any property, investment or undertaking as is referred to in that clause in good faith, or the sale or lease of any property of the company where the ordinary business of the company comprises of selling or leasing. So in that case, if it is not with the consent of the shareholders of the company, if it is not with the consent of the company itself, in that case, that transaction is declared as ultra wise borrowings of the company. So any property of the company, for the sale of any property of the company, during the normal course of business, during the ordinary course of business, comprising of selling, comprising of leasing, in that case, the other persons who buys, acquire property on lease or make an investment without the permissions of the company, then that transaction, that lease agreement, purchase agreement is declared as ultra-wise transaction. So for these transactions, special resolution has to be passed by the company giving the consenting to the transaction referred to in clause A of subsection 1 and may stipulate such conditions as may be specified in such resolution, including conditions regarding the use, disposal or investment of the sale proceeds which may result from the transactions. Then come to point number 8. So no debt incurred by the company in excess of the limit imposed by clause C of subsection 1 shall be valid and actual unless the lender proves that he advanced the loan in good faith and without knowledge that the limit imposed by that clause had been exceeded. So when a company has no borrowing powers or where the memorandum of the cession fixes a limit on the borrowing powers of the company, any borrowing in the first case and any borrowing in the excess of such limit in the other case is ultra-wise the company. So this is as per clause C of subsection 1 to make your contract agreement valid, effectual, unless it is approved, passed by the members of the company, by the shareholders of the company, in the general meetings of the company. So no debt incurred by the company in excess of the limit imposed by the sections shall be valid effectual unless the lender proves that he advanced the loan in good faith without knowledge that the limit imposed by that clause has been exceeded. So that can obtain advantage under this section that without have no knowledge that this has been added, this not being this part of the MO of the company without knowledge and enter into contact with good faith. So we can obtain a remedy under the company's law. So when a company has no borrowing powers, when the memorandum of association of the company fixes a limit on the borrowing powers of the company, any borrowings in the first case and any borrowing in excess of such limit in other cases is ultra-wise the company. So in such a case, the contract is void ab initio and the lender cannot sue the company for the return of the loan, and the lender will also be under an obligation to return back the securities if any. The company cannot ratify the ultra-wise loan by resolution in general meeting. So it has to be, in such a case, contract is declared as a void ab initio in the court of law for ultra-wise borrowings, and lender cannot sue the company for the return of the loan because it is your duty, it is your responsibility to enter into contract which is which is within the boundaries of the company, within the MO of the company, within the boundaries of the AO of the company. And if you enter into contract which is not permissible by the company, not make it valid by the company, then in that case you are liable to bear the consequences of that particular contract of transactions. The court is not liable to return your amount because you are entering a transaction which is not valid, which is invalid, which is maybe legal but not valid, maybe legal by the Companies Act but not valid. So for that transaction, the lender cannot sue the company for the return of the loan, and the lender will also be under an obligation to return back the securities if any. So company cannot ratify the ultra-vires loan by resolution in general meetings. Then creation of charges on assets as per section 2, subsection 16. Charge means an interest or lien created on the property or assets of a company or any of its undertakings or both as security and includes a mortgage. So principal rule of creation of charge is that charge will be created on the assets of the company, assets as defined in Schedule 3rd of the Companies Act 2013, Section 2, Subsection 16. This is as per Section 2, Subsection 16 of the Companies Act. Charge means an interest on the created on the property of the company, assets of the company, or any undertakings of the company, securities of the company, and includes a mortgage. And the principal creation charge is that charge will be creating on the assets of the company as as defined in Schedule 3rd of the Companies Act 2013. So a charge is created, right is created by any person, including a company, referred to as the borrower, on its assets and properties, present and future, in favor of financial institutions or bank, referred to as a lender, which has agreed to extend financial assistance. So charge is a right created by any person. Again I'm repeating that line. A charge is a right created by any person, including a company, referred to as the borrower, on its assets and properties, present and future properties of the company, in favor of financial institutions or banks, referred to as a lender, which has agreed to extend financial assistance. So the bank will only provide you loans and advances when you hold your property, charge your property with the banks or financial institutions. Then only in that case the bank can give you loans and advances on the security or on the charge of the properties of the company, assets of the company, undertakings of the company, whether present by nature or future by nature. So you have to give a security of your, give a lien of your properties of your company, assets of your company to banks, financial institutions, to which has agreed to extend financial assistance to the company, like banks or financial institutions like SBI Bank, Punjab National Bank, or any other scheduled commercial banks as per the Reserve Bank of India, called it as scheduled commercial banks, or any financial institutions like IDBI, IFCI, ICCI. Uh, so uh, you have to give a charge, you have to create a charge lien on your assets in order to obtain loans and advances. Then next point in this, almost all the large and small scale companies depend upon share capital and borrowed capital for the purposes of investment in their projects. But so borrowed capital played a very important role as a part of the total capital of the company, including the share capital of the company, that includes equity share capital of the company, preferential capital of the company, and borrowed capital of the company. Secured loan is there, unsecured loan is there, loans advances is there from banks or financial institutions. So borrowed capital may consist of fund raised by issuing of debentures, may be secured by nature, unsecured by nature, or by obtaining financial assistance from banks or financial institutions. That is also this is also part of total capital of the company. That is borrowed capital of the company, in addition to the share capital of the company, uh, in the striving of equity share capital, preferred share capital of the company, majorly. Uh, but bond capital includes funds raised by the company by the issue of debentures to the debenture holders of the company. They are the by obtaining loans or advances from banks or financial institutions and other financial bodies. So without security, without a charge, banks will not lend you money uh, to the companies or corporate sectors. So financial institutions and banks don't lend monies unless they are sure that their funds are safe and they would be repaid as per the agreed repayment schedule along with the payment of interest. So in order to secure their loans, they resort to creating right in the assets and properties of the borrowing companies, which is known as a charge on assets of the company. Then come to the types of charges on assets. Fixed charges there. And fixed charge is a type of security interest that is attached to a specific assets or piece of property, such as real estate or equipment. And this means that the lender has control over the assets and the borrower cannot sell, dispose of the assets without the lender consent. Fixed charges are typically used to secure loans, including term loans or working capital loans for large assets such as property or equipment. So, this is because fixed charges offer lenders high degree of security. If the borrower defaults on the loan, a lender can seize the assets and sell it to the recoup their losses. So fixed charge is a type of charges on assets. Fixed charge is a type of security interest that is attached to a specific asset or a piece of property of the company, real estate of the company, equipment of the company, which company can give as a security, as a mode of security to the banks and financial institutions in order to obtain loans and advances. A company has to give a charge over the assets, and the assets are fixed by nature. Typically, fixed by nature. That is, fixed charge is typically a type security interest that is attached to a specific assets, piece of property, real estate or equipment. This means that the lender has control over the assets of the company. If the company is not able to repay the amount, repayment of the amount of the loan, in that case, the bank can use the property of the company for the purposes of the repayment of the loan of the bank. So, without the um, lender consent, company cannot sell, cannot dispose of its property or its assets if the fixed charge is created over the assets of the company. So, fixed charges are typically used to secure loans, including term loans or working capital loans for large assets such as property or equipment. And this is because fixed charges offer lenders a high degree of security, and if the borrower defaults on the loan, the lender can seize the assets and sell it to recoup their losses. Then come to the floating charge. Floating charge is a type of security interest that is attached to a changing pool of assets such as inventory, uh, accounts receivable, intellectual properties. So this type of property can be charged for the purposes of obtaining loans and advances from the banks or financial institutions as a security, as a type of security that is called as floating charge. Floating charge. So, floating charge is a type of security interest that is attached to these type of assets, that is inventory, account receivable, and intellectual properties. This means that the lender does not have control over the assets, and the borrower can sell and dispose of the assets without the lender consent. So floating charges are typically used to secure loans for businesses that have a lot of current assets such as inventory and account receivables, and this is because of floating charges offer lenders high degree of flexibility. So floating charges basically creating a charge over the current assets of the company, assets of the company for the purposes of uh, borrowing capital from the banks or financial institutions for the purposes of obtaining the borrowed capitals for the company. And for these purposes, we are using our current assets such as inventory and account receivable. That is called as floating charge over the assets of the company for the purpose of security to the banks and financial institution in order to obtain loans and advances from banks and financial institutions. So this is because floating charges offer lenders a high degree of flexibility. If the borrower defaults on the loan, then the lender can seize the assets that are subject to the charge, even if the assets have been sold or disposed of. Again, the continuation of types of charges on assets. Number one is floating charges can be a charge on inventory, it can be a charge on account receivable, it can be a charge on your intellectual property, and it is attached to a pool of assets. The lender does not have control over the assets. The borrower can sell and dispose of the assets without the uh, lender consent. Okay. In the case of floating charge, but not in the case of fixed charge. Okay. So property or assets under floating charge company, movable property like inventories, account receivables, book debts, and such other current assets. So property or assets under the floating charge, it includes companies movable properties like inventories of the company, account receivable of the company, book debts of the company, and other current assets of the company. Thank you.